Now, the environmental group Friends of the Irish Environment is warning that a protected rare snail at Doonbeg is now in what experts describe as terminal decline. The charity says this has serious implications for further development at the Trump-owned golf resort, including the proposed Irish Ballroom, and argues that existing court orders aren't being complied with. Now, Director of Friends of the Irish Environment, Tony Lowes, joins us now. Tony, good morning to you.
Good morning, Alan.
Thank you very much for being with us. So can you just explain fully what you're objecting to at Doonbeg, why this issue has arisen, and can you tell us more about the tiny protected snail at the centre of this dispute?
Yes, Doonbeg's White Strand is one of the loveliest sand dune systems on the Irish coast. It was the only fairly intact left in County Clare in the 1990s when Shannon Development got a hold of a 2.2 million grant from the European Commission to build a leisure centre and golf course there. And there was immediate opposition from the Parks and Wildlife Service, from the Heritage Council, from groups like ours, but there was a push to go ahead and do it, and the protection that had been placed on it, the special area of conservation, was reduced from almost 300 hectares down to less than 50 hectares. And the project went ahead. This was 2014 when Trump came for the first time to Ireland to examine this property he'd just bought. And he said the purpose of coming there was to build a ballroom. It was going to be the greatest ballroom in Ireland, one of the greatest ballrooms in the world. And it's going to be at Doonbeg. And he acknowledged then that there were problems, particularly the snail. It's a very small, little snail, but it's quite rare in Ireland. It requires undisturbed, moist habitats and lives in dunes, flax and places like that. So,
and Tony, can you explain why is this snail Vertigo angustier, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, why is this species so important legally and environmentally?
I think one of the problems that we have is understanding the value of species. Now, there are many species still to be discovered, and there are other species that have qualities and properties that we're not aware of. If you keep removing species, if you allow them to die out, then it's a bit like removing bricks from a wall. You could pull out a few bricks here and there, but you know what's going to happen in the end. Another example is flying a plane with the rivets popping off. And you can stay in the air for a long time, but they are all related to each other. In fact, they've now found that snails can provide a relief for otherwise untreatable pain in terminal cancer patients. So it's not just that the snail is there. It also, aside from itself, because it has calcium and takes up calcium from the soil, it doesn't live very long, a year and a half. And when it dies, that shell, which is full of calcium, provides birds with a source of calcium that they need for their eggs. And studies have shown that when you decline the number of snails in an area, the birds can no longer get enough calcium to be sure that their eggs will remain intact and their breeding rate and their numbers.
Okay.
We're not just talking about a tiny snail.
Okay. The developers argue, though, Tony, that the proposed ballroom and associated works will have no adverse effect on the snails. Why do you believe that's not enough under the law?
Well, this was the problem, that we found that it wasn't in practice being properly protected. So we brought a high court case in order to assure the protection of the snail. And we were 5 days in the High Court. That was the year 2000. This is 25 years ago, when litigation was even more difficult than it is today. But we had the now Supreme Court Justice Hogan was our senior counsel. And the environmental groups in the country were very upset by what was happening. And the case went on for 5 days until the government offered a compromise. And the compromise that they offered was that they would give a court order and a letter of comfort to us that ensured that the status of the snail would be maintained or improved. So we have this legal order saying that they must maintain or improve it. And they're now telling us, didn't know this, that it's been in decline since 2019 and now is in terminal decline.
Okay. And Tony, I'm sure, look, you're aware there'll be you're aware there'll be some people listening this morning to Morning Focus who might wonder why development can be delayed over a snail. How would you respond to those who might see this as disproportionate?
I think that's what I was touching on earlier, when we don't actually appreciate the value of the species that we are slowly facing extinction. We don't understand that this isn't just a nicety, a flower that might not smell as nice, something like that. This is vital to the whole way that the ecosystem purifies our water, provides food, transfers it, moves it from one place to another. You can't go in and just take them out like that. This is really hard to explain to people. It's much easier to explain, if you change your heating system, you'll help us avoid global warming. People get that. I think they get that. And I think that's difficult as it is, they try. But when we come down to swans and seals, we find ourselves just laughed out of court.
Tony, if the planning authority proceeds regardless, what options are open to Friends of the Irish Environment? Is this something that could potentially end up back in the courts?
That would be the fear. But, we're a long way from that now. There's submissions are accepted on the planning application until the 3rd of February, and then it has to be decided, and obviously it will be appealed. And then we'd have to look at that in the end and what the situation was. But I think the court order and the comfort are so clear and were obtained at such cost that I hope people will understand this isn't just a fun run. This is something very, very serious.
Okay, well, we will keep our listeners abreast of developments in this particular story. We'll leave it there for the moment. Tony, thank you for being with us on the show this morning.